Going Inside is a podcast on a mission to help people heal from trauma and reconnect with their authentic self. Join me, trauma therapist John Clark, for guest interviews, real life therapy sessions, and soothing guided meditations. Whether you're navigating your own trauma, helping others heal from trauma, or simply yearning for a deeper understanding of yourself, Going Inside is your companion on the path to healing and self discovery. Download free guided meditations and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarktherapy.com. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Carrie Haynes, LPC, is a licensed professional counselor and the creator of The Web, Weaving Psychology and Soul in Circle podcast. She has dedicated her career to specializing in group work, empowering therapists to facilitate transformational group experiences. Carrie's holistic approach blends clinical expertise with grounded spiritual practices, emphasizing the healing power of connection and community. She's passionate about the potential of group work to create meaningful change in the world. Carrie, thanks for being here. And what's going on in your world?
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day here in Colorado. It can feel spring. And so that feels really lovely to feel March. And we had like a almost 70-degree day yesterday and we were
There you go.
outside. So I feel like that's what's most present for me is just like spring. And it's strange to be in the beauty of spring with the backdrop of a lot of tumultuousness in the world. So that's what I'm showing up with.
Yeah. I appreciate the perspective. I've been in California off and on so long that I have a theory that when you have what I call real seasons, you are even more grateful when the sun comes out. My wife, who's native Californian, disagrees. She says she's grateful for the year-round sun that we have here, more or less, but I don't think that's possible. When you haven't really earned it with like a true winter. Also, I'm from Virginia where we had true winters, so
So
you know
what
I
it's
know.
like to like get through the winter and then
to get through it.
yes. Yeah. And people are saying that like we made it. We made it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's funny because like the past couple times we've reconnected, there's a lot of overlap in our backgrounds and kind of journeys. We both started out and had early clinical training in psychodynamic therapy and have kind of grown into focusing on trauma, more holistic approaches. We both have an interest in IFS. I actually saw you in the Zoom room of Chris Burris's IFS training recently. It was like a lot of people, but saw your name on there. So, and you've seemed to have very gracefully like integrated all of you and your interests into your current programs. And I'm sure doesn't feel as seamless as it has been. You put a lot of work into it, but walk me through like how you've integrated these shifts over the years and just kind of like what you're up to lately.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's amazing you were there. Yeah. I really loved that workshop too. Yeah. And
Yeah.
IFS is just coming more and more into my world.
Yeah.
And into my work in groups and with individual clients. Yeah. So, like you starting out with a psychodynamic group work frame, and groups always been my specialty since grad school. I sort of stumbled into it, but immediately fell in love with the intimacy and the connection and the juice that could happen when we're together like that in community. Just felt like an energy and a possibility that wasn't as potent in individual. And so I loved that part. And there were parts over my career, though, in psychodynamic that weren't fully resonating for me. And, I think some of that is just we've evolved. We're bringing the body in, spirituality is coming in, we're talking about different identities. And psychodynamic wasn't evolving, or at least I wasn't exposed to it in that way. So I was searching for different modalities and also benefiting from them, like my own work. I'm really drawn to different practices, and I'm like you, I think, where um, I'm an explorer and I want to experience and learn new things. And So I'm a lifelong learner and interested
Yeah.
and want to incorporate the things that are benefiting me.
Yeah.
So it has not been as seamless as it seems. There's actually been a long time where a lot of the group work that I was doing felt very separated. It was like,
Yeah.
here's my spiritual circles where I'm doing more embodiment and meditation and stuff like that. And then here are my interpersonal process groups, and here's the clinical work. And at some point I realized that, for me it's not separate. It's all one.
Yeah.
And so that is what's formed into my current offerings now, where I I am so grateful for the foundation of psychodynamic work, because you know this, like, a group is a group. Like, you get humans together and there are dynamics, and I am so grateful for learning how to work with transference and countertransference and all the stuff that still happens. And yet I feel like the bowl has gotten bigger, and my ability to meet people in different ways feels exciting and juicier. So I do have a foundation that I use, which is based on um, all of these different modalities blending together, circle and some process stuff, group dynamic stuff, embodiment practices, things like that, that form kind of a basis. And then
Hmm.
I teach and train people also to incorporate who they are. So that's really my passion, is empowering other therapists who maybe have been scared of group work or been kind of skeptical, to one, take a chance and open their mind to that work, but also to see how they can bring their unique way of being into this bowl that I can offer to support them in working with groups.
Mm.
Yeah, or circles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The opportunity of being self-employed, well, along with the some of the stresses and burdens of being self-employed, is you can really kind of have it all and create your dream job. And in your case, like really integrating so much of your background and your personhood. And yeah, I love seeing that all come to life and seeing the journey, or even as your brand evolves to kind of match who you are today and what you're about. So I love that. And the spirituality piece feels very much like a missing piece. And in my world, and a lot of what we talk about on the show is in the realm of healing from trauma. In a lot of other cultures and indigenous cultures, working with spirituality and working with spirit is just built into healing and trauma recovery. And in our culture, it's not so second nature, but and as therapists, it's an interesting thing to kind of weave it in, right, or to do it in a way that doesn't feel clunky. And then you have therapists that are like explicitly, let's say, faith based, or say I do Christian counseling, but then when you open it up even wider and integrate spirituality in a you know an even broader way, it can make things pretty interesting and really give clients permission to bring their spirituality into the room.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the hardest things for me. Is I was so, I think, afraid to step out and share. And so that was part of my hesitation, is this
Mm,
spiritual world and the work I was doing spiritually was so meaningful for me. And yet I was, at a university for over 10 years where, we were very evidence-based practices and all of that stuff. And I felt like, I was leaving a part of myself at the door at
yeah.
times, or kind of sliding it in with clients that I felt like were, or there's like this real rigid way that we're taught to
Yeah.
bring spirituality in, which to me, I think we need to be aware and thoughtful about how we do it. And also, there was a part that when I learned the circles, just this basic concept of moving from the head to the heart. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like talking about what you believe, but just letting the heart lead, or in IFS, the concept of self. Like,
Hmm.
this this is like, human beings get this and understand this. Human beings get what it's like to be with a
Hmm.
facilitator who's in their heart, or a facilitator who's in their head, and it changes the whole dynamic of the group
Yeah.
work. So that was empowering, and I
Yeah.
think for me, that's when my journey really shifted, when I just stopped hiding and was like, "All right, like, this is what I've got, and some people might not like what I'm gonna bring, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring it all." Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, the other side of me and the parts of me that are not as integrated is over here. I have my kind of clinical work and trauma work, and then I have a business coaching business for therapists called Private Practice Workshop. Some people listening know that, some people don't. Some people don't care, or if you're a therapy consumer, it doesn't apply to you. But it's like the point of a brand is to attract the right people and also repel the wrong people, right? That are not a good fit for what I do, right? So those strong signals can be a really good thing. Um, this idea of head and heart is a really interesting one and something I think a lot about, especially given where I practice out here in Silicon Valley, and we work with a lot of folks with strong intellectualizer parts, and especially in the realm of trauma, people come in and first of all, it feels safer in their head, and they're so used to solving problems in their head, and so naturally they do that in therapy, right? And they come in and this idea of like, I'm going to think my way out of my trauma, and that's a paradigm that I have to kind of break down gently pretty early on. And one way I do that is just constant invitations back to the body and really to the heart. And then of course when we're doing parts work, really making sure we have a lot of that heart energy to send to these parts. But it can be a shift at first, right? And because like figuring stuff out has been so effective in their life and in other domains of their life, and then yet it's like it's not working here, and it's not working to heal that little boy inside me, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And do you I have this sense of you, this may be wrong, but just maybe the way I know you, that even though you have these different aspects, that you as a person are really coming through on each of these places. So it's also that you are your brand, right? And you've done so
Yeah,
much of your own work in all these areas that you're bringing all of it to business coaching, to therapy with your clients, all of that. Yeah.
I think that's true. And even the way I approach business coaching, what I'm really thinking about is helping people unlock the wisdom that's already inside of them. So it's like, even though I might know, uh, for instance, a lot of technical knowledge about SEO or like how to, market a website or whatever, that's less often what the work is really about. It's really more like therapeutic business coaching and helping people work with the parts of them that are perfectionistic or that fear rejection or fear confrontation or fear success, right? What will it mean if I'm more successful, or if my business is successful, or if my team members don't think I'm paying enough or whatever. So to me it's just all therapy. Like that's just who I am in every realm, and I'm in that helping role professionally. But yeah, um as much as I'd love to make this about me, um I want to make it about you, which is, tell me more about like the foundation of the circle program. And I know you've mentioned before, and we've talked about the teacher that you worked with for that, but like what is the foundation?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm going to go back and just share that. So Jalaja Bonheim is the teacher, and she created a type of group work called circle work, and it actually started in the Bay Area when she was living there. And I was searching, for a more feminine, and again, feminine not meaning women, although I do a lot of women's work, but just a softer, more heart, so, the qualities traditionally associated with the term feminine, but that we all have. Um, I was searching for something more like that. And Tara Brock, who's always been one of my teachers, and I really benefit from everything she puts out into the world. I really love her style. And she sent something out about Jalaja's circle work. And I just immediately lit up. And Jalaja does these trainings in Ithaca. Unfortunately, she retired. Um, so no longer, but I was like, how you can feel that full body, like, this is
Yeah.
for me, I'm going. It just lit me right up, and I knew I was going to be there. And circle work is a type of modality that there are 7 pillars of circle work. And the pillars associated with circle work are the need to transform patriarchy is a big part of circle work. Another part of circle work is incorporating spirituality. So that's important. Another part of circle work is expanding beyond our individual healing. So we're really looking at that our individual healing affects the planet, affects the globe, that we're doing this in service of the planet. Um, the other pillar of circle work is embodiment, so that everything is brought back to a body level. One of Jalaja's um, early influences is she was an Indian temple dancer. She went to India and studied temple dancing, and she's such a very embodied person. So her circles started out as movement circles and then
Mm.
moved into bringing in other types of sharing and psychotherapy, psychotherapeutic work. So those are some of them. I don't know if I want to go through all of them, but
Yeah.
connection is a cornerstone too. So there are books and there's a lot of resources that we can put if people are interested in learning more about circle work. There's several books that Jalaja has written. So
Yeah.
there's access. But so when I
Mm.
went to her training in Ithaca, it just felt like something opened because it did have the aspects of group work that I've always loved, but there was a different frame. And that frame
Mhm.
was that you are already whole, you've just forgotten. Um, so there was no striving or trying to get somewhere. Like, let's figure out what's wrong and do the work on it. But the work was happening, it was just reversed. And so there were all
Mm.
these reminders. And what I felt like when I was in the circle were that these parts of me I could see, but they were sort of, moving back. And what I would say in IFS language is there was so much self energy that
Yeah.
it just resonated my self energy. And
Mhm.
so my parts relaxed and
Yeah.
self came forward without really even working with them. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes parts would come up and there would for different individuals at different times, and we would work with them, but it sort of naturally arose because the self energy in the group was so strong and the practices were
Yeah.
designed that way. And it was just a beautiful and transformative experience. And after that, I was like, I'm coming to every one of these and I want to learn how to really offer this more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's beautifully said. The parts naturally want to unblend actually, and so even just being in a an environment in a group with a lot of self energy begets self energy, right? And so that unblending just starts kind of happening on its own. And the more that happens, the more our true nature comes through. And so that innate healing propensity that we all have is tapped into. Um, and then the question is, of course, like, how do we tap into that more? Or how do you tap into it once you leave that group and go back home and you're dealing with life and kids and stress and taxes and all the bullshit of life?
Yes,
you
absolutely.
know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I did learn is that the circle, being there like retreat, but it really is a practice. And I like
Yeah.
practice it daily that I don't have to be in circle, but I really see the circle as like a spiritual practice that I tune into every day. So how do I shift from head to heart? But I still want to honor. It's like I'm honoring my head. Like my head
Yeah.
is working hard for me and I need that, right? But it's in service of the heart. I want the heart to lead and the head to follow rather than
Mm-hmm.
the reverse. And so I
Mm-hmm.
really see what I learned there as a practice for my everyday life.
Yeah.
It really did change the way I move through the world.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot now from the trainings that I do with the people that come and learn is they first come and think they're going to learn a modality and they do, but what they come away with is yearning for this because it benefits them and their
Yeah.
life and the way they interact with their partners and their friends and themselves.
Yeah.
And then it just naturally comes out. Offering it is just a natural extension of how it's
Yeah.
changing them on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Going back for a second to the patriarchal piece, I think a lot about theory and where we came from, and again going back to the psychodynamic piece, which is and really almost all of the major modalities that at least were taught when I was in graduate school were built by created by old white men, and this idea, even I went to Philadelphia and did all these CBT trainings, even trained with Aaron Beck himself, who like this idea that where does pathology come from? You feel bad because your thoughts are wrong, right? Or they're distorted and not based in reality. We have to kind of untangle those thoughts, which if you want to put that into a parts perspective, it can be pretty handy, right? Parts of you hold beliefs that are rooted in some painful experience way back then, right? And those parts are getting activated today when your partner says, "Hey, why didn't you unload the dishwasher?" or whatever. That might be one of mine.
I've got that one too.
And okay. And then, again, this idea that we can just kind of untangle our thoughts and be rational and think a rational thought, which is that I'm not worthless, right? Or if you challenge beliefs like that, like core beliefs, and the client says, "Well, I have this belief or this fear that like I'm worthless," and the CBT therapist goes, "Well, let's show me the evidence that you're worthless." And then they start to list a bunch of things. Well, I got fired, and sometimes my partner's not happy with me because I didn't unload the dishwasher, right? I feel like my friends don't call me enough, and I have to call them a lot, or whatever it is. Okay, show me the evidence that you're not worthless. Well, I have a job, and like I'm pretty good at basketball, or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that might be helpful, but nothing has really happened yet, right? You've just kind of illuminated the beliefs that are maybe driving the depression or the social anxiety or whatever it might be. Yeah, you get where I'm going.
I do. I do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is so helpful in some of these newer modalities, or just the way we're looking at the world, is that we're moving in some of these from this individual focus on, you just
exactly.
need to think different. You're the cause of your own suffering, which I guess is
Yeah,
true in some, right? But I like the frame of, and it's, I think Chris Burris says this in his book, like, it's not the individual's fish, but the water that they're swimming in. And if we can have that kind of context, and I think in group work, that's one thing that I feel like is so beautiful, because you can see the water. You can see that, oh, this isn't just me, it's her and him, and they are inherently like lovable and worthy, but the
yeah,
belief is all of ours. So we start to unwind the collective beliefs that are rooted in patriarchy and that hurt us
yeah,
all.
yeah,
And it's harder in the individual therapy room to see that this isn't my suffering. This is the suffering. And I just have
yeah,
one thread of it, and I'm suffering from it, but it's not mine or something wrong with me, rather
yeah,
than I just have these thoughts, which are true, it's true,
yeah,
but it brings a lot more compassion when we can see, one, how those were created, and that how could we not have those thoughts given the context that we're all in together.
Hey, it's John, just popping in to say this is the last chance to sign up for my upcoming webinar, helping you avoid burnout by using IFS. Using IFS is going to help protect you from burnout, help you have a sustainable career, and help your clients get better results faster. I hope you'll join me for this webinar. You can learn more and sign up with the link in the description. See you there. Well, I work with a lot of men in my practice. They just naturally choose me because they make a big assumption that I get it, right? That I probably get what it's like to be a dude in this world. And to whatever extent I can, I do, I suppose, through my own lens. And something that I see a lot is men that carry a tremendous amount of shame. That shame might actually be show up as anger. That anger might be the thing that landed them in my office, right? And someone in their life said, you have an anger problem, you need to go to therapy. But it's actually tremendous shame. Um, Shame, it again, burdens of worthlessness, not being enough, right? I'm not successful enough. I don't make enough money. Whatever it might be, this ultra competitiveness of the world, like the toxicity of capitalism of I don't have enough, therefore I'm not enough. Um, and then the tremendous isolation that men face around, I need to deal with this shit on my own. And it's actually, it's humiliating just to be here and talking to this John guy, even though like he's pretty nice and I don't think he's judging me, but parts of me are horrified that I'm even here. Cause being here means I couldn't fix this on my own. I tried, right? And I couldn't. So when I'm sitting down with a lot of men, I'm sifting through all these layers for what could be weeks or months, right? Just to try to get to, their more vulnerable parts, right? They're the parts that are really holding this woundedness. And of course, just being in society is continuing the woundedness. And all these, all this emphasis on individuality and individualism and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and capitalism. They're just so brutal to the psyche. And I feel like a lot of what your work does is really the counter to a lot of that, which is community, togetherness, heart energy. And what a wonderful counter to like this other vortex that a lot of us are in.
Thank you. Yeah. And I find that it's how do we get men to allow themselves to show up for things like that
Yeah.
and invite them in a way that feels okay. And I'm
Yeah.
still figuring that out. I've worked a lot with women, and I think partially because that's very comfortable for me.
Yeah.
I feel drawn, but I hear over and over again with the women that I'm working with, like, what about our men? Like, we know, as a mother too of a 13-year-old boy, like I am keenly aware of what he's taking in right now. And also the ways that I could reinforce it inadvertently because I haven't uh, deconditioned myself from,
Yeah.
capitalism or patriarchy or whatever.
Yeah.
And so just
Yeah.
watching this happen and seeing the men,
Yeah.
and I just feel like there's such a yearning from the women therapists that I've worked with is how do we serve men? Because,
Yeah.
just in our field, there's also less men doing the work. So then if we are just waiting
That's
for the
true.
men to pull the other men out, it's it's going to take a lot longer. Like, and
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about that, but I have questions about, like, I actually asked another male therapist who was on my podcast. I'm going to actually publish it this week. His name's Dewey Freeman, and he does a lot of Gestalt
Mm-hmm.
work and works with like men's groups a lot. And I'm like, can we work with men? Like, can I do a group for men when I don't have that identity and I don't get it
Yeah.
like John, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think part of that, and again, going back to our psychodynamic roots, is we check our own transference, right? So I supervise, I've got 9 clinicians in the practice now. And if a clinician of mine, let's say a female clinician, is having transference with a male and finding him really off putting or prickly or whatever it might be, we start by helping the therapist look at what's coming up for them, right? Or what thoughts and feelings do you have toward men in general, and a lot of the heat that men have taken in the past few years, and in some regards, very rightly so. And in other regards, it's meant that a lot of men take their suffering to an even deeper, isolated place and feel like I can't talk about my suffering because it doesn't count because we're the ones carrying the privilege. So that while it is true that we're the ones carrying the massive amounts of privilege and we're the ones that have kind of built the patriarchy and now we're also suffering from it, right? So I think part of it is like just thinking about what comes up for you to work with men. For me, ironically, men are way harder for me to work with than women. It's like I grew up with a sister. My best friend, in high school was a girl. Like it was just, I've always gotten along better with women. I'm in a profession where I'm mostly surrounded by women. Like my grad school cohort was mostly women. Ironically, most of my professors were men. Um, but I think about this stuff all the time, right? And again, just these layers that we have to sift through. But again, even some of the men that come to my office, their competitiveness will play out with me, and they'll talk really explicitly about how much money they made last quarter. And I can tell they're looking for a response from me, right? Or they're hoping that I am impressed by that. On the other hand, I had a client recently who, after an entire session of talking about some issue with work, and this is where our psychodynamic, roots can come in really handy. He just kind of admitted, I'm humiliated to share this with you, right?
Mm,
I'm really wondering what you're thinking, right? Just straight up asking me, right? Like,
mm,
do you think I'm being ridiculous? You know,
mm,
um, and I responded directly to that, and very compassionately said, I don't think you're being ridiculous. I think you're in a really tough place, and you're scared to talk to this person at work, and it makes sense why you're scared, and we just kind of worked through that. But again, if he hadn't named that, I wouldn't have quite known that that layer was there and that it was actually playing out with me. And again, as
yeah,
much as I think I'm like warm and approachable and a pretty nice dude, all of their male stuff plays out with me too, right? And
absolutely.
vice versa. Mine plays out with them in terms of my own burdens of incompetence and worthiness and all that.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had so many men where I have this like default where they might be the only man who's in, like, I do ketamine assisted
Mm-hmm.
psychotherapy groups, and I'm noticing more men will come for the psychedelic work. Like that feels a little safer to
Yeah.
come in that way. And great. And so they'll come and be in that circle, and sometimes they might be the only. And I'll say, I think there's one other male. And they're like, actually, I kinda like that it's all women and me. For them, that I've heard a lot of men say, "I don't." It might actually bring up more to have another
Yeah.
man in the group than it is for them
Oh,
to
it can be
only
super
want
activating.
women.
Yeah.
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 So they've said,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a lot of men wanna see female therapists
Yeah.
too for
Yeah.
that reason, so that makes sense that that
Yeah.
plays out. Yeah.
It can be both really activating and also the eventual place that they might need to be for true corrective emotional experience, which is like really being held, maybe by one guy like me, maybe ideally by a group of men sitting in a circle, right?
Absolutely.
Where they can bring these parts that carry these burdens of worthlessness and go, there's a part of me that is so terrified that I'm worthless, that I'm not enough, or that I've had all this success in business and there's still a part of me that doesn't feel like I'm enough, right? Or
Mhm.
a part of me that feels like I'm always about to get in trouble, right?
Mhm.
Even though I'm 57 and got all this stuff going for me, so for them to bring that into a group like that, that's where the real healing can happen. Because again, I'm just one person, and if I can resonate with them and say you're not a burden, right? Like you are enough, but only some portion of it gets in, right?
So
Because what
true.
they're really wondering is like in the greater context of men, it's like, am I lovable? Am I
Mhm.
actually lovable, or am I actually reprehensible, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like it's
Absolutely.
the language and the beliefs that our parts hold is usually that rudimentary, right? It's like that, that binary.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do think there's something so corrective about a group because, I've had many, many clients who will say to me, well, I believe you, but you're supposed to say that. Like
Exactly.
you're a
Yeah.
therapist. Like that's your
Yeah.
job. Like
Paying
that's
you to
not
be
what
nice.
everyone.
Yeah.
But once I get them to be in a group and they start to get the exact same feedback and compassionate responses from so many others, and even hear the exact same story, it's a lot
Yeah.
harder to dismiss
Totally.
their belonging, their lovability. So I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
agree more that I think men need those spaces with other men,
Mm-hmm.
um, to really start to take it in and believe in their belonging, and to actually let go of some of this burdens that keep them apart. That's the
Yeah.
other thing, is that reinforces that I have to do it on my own. And so many men are so lonely. They're so lonely,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're just doing it all on their own, and it's really
Yeah.
exhausting. Yeah.
It's an epidemic that we're still in the thick of. And so I think about it a lot. I appreciate that you've been willing to talk about it here today. The last thing I'll say on this piece, and not having planned to like make this episode about men is, years ago when I graduated, undergraduate, I got in a Honda Civic and drove with 5 dudes out to Colorado, not far from your neck of the woods in Estes Park. And
Mhm.
we were in this group, this men's group with basically older men who were like mentors, one of whom was a therapist. And one of those like nights sitting around a campfire, this mentor, this therapist told me, John, a man is two things, strong and gentle. The problem is most men only get one right.
Mhm.
It's really hard to get both right, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think about that a lot. I'm also thinking about your husband who definitely has both. He definitely gets both right. So you've done well there. Um,
Thank you.
and yeah, I just see that playing out again as more of the dilemma of like how to be both.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that takes us to the group stuff too, that is so beautiful, that that's what I see with group facilitators too, is that a good
Hmm.
group facilitator needs to be both things,
There you
strong
go.
and gentle.
Yeah.
And I think most only get one right. And so there's a lot of times where a group facilitator can be very good at being insightful and setting the boundaries, but they miss it when it's time to offer the compassion. I always say, like, we want to hold the big bowl, so there's a lot of spaciousness and love and acceptance and all of that, but we also need the knife to cut through when things are happening, and to direct the
Mm.
group, and to be strong when things are getting out of control, because a group can be used for, it's very, very intense, and that can be for
Yeah.
better or worse. That intensity can really cause harm if we
Mm.
don't know how to be skillful. So I think about that in terms of, I have a lot of people these days are like, you just need to know how to hold space if you're a group facilitator. Not true. It's actually not true. Holding space is very important. That is foundational. And you also have to have the skill to be able to
Yeah.
facilitate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the Carl Rogers stance. It's like that condition of positive regard for your client is necessary but not sufficient, right? It's a necessary condition. We can all agree that like holding space is necessary, but is it sufficient enough? And especially in a group setting where um, a single person can affect that group, can and does affect that group dynamic in an instant, right? Or someone comes in with a very different energy or very toward energy that can change everything. And as a group facilitator, you might need to be a little more active than you would be as a therapist, right? It's not necessarily, the best thing to just let it all play out, let the group members figure it out, because keeping safety, establishing safety, and keeping safety is a big part of it. And again, especially in the world of trauma therapy and people in that group with the trauma history, that sense of safety is a constant question mark for folks,
Mhm.
right? When they're on their healing journey.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. What else is missing from the conversation? Again, there's a part of me that's like, did I make this whole thing about men, and is that a very man thing to do? Is that a very toxic man thing to do? But what else is missing from the conversation around your work and groups?
Hmm. I think, well, what's alive for me right now that I want people to know and be thinking about and hearing is that we're at a time, I believe, that people are yearning for connection and to come back together. There's COVID, there's a lot of stuff going on politically, where gathering and being connection is important. And I also think our field as a whole is looking at more indigenous ways of healing, which have always happened in community. And um, and also the decolonizing of therapy, and looking at more of the ways that our communities of care can be incredibly healing. So I feel like there's a real call right now to group work. And I also think it's a real opportunity for those of us who have been in private practice or have been working in isolation in other, it's hard work that we do. And when we do it
Hmm.
behind closed doors on our own, we also suffer that burden of doing it on our own.
Yeah.
Because this really isn't just about men. I don't think you made it about men. I think I was going there because I think that comes up for me with you, because I see you as um, somebody who I can talk to about how do we get this out to men, since that's
Hmm.
part of your work. Because I think everybody needs these spaces, and that's
Yeah.
really my hope. And So part of my call too is for therapists, because I think a lot of therapists have this belief about themselves, like, I could never do a group, or I didn't like group, or I don't, that's not my thing. And I want to challenge that and have us consider, given the skills that we do have, they're very transferable, to be able to challenge ourselves to offer more group work, even when it's uncomfortable. I think there's a real need. And I think it meets our needs as well as the client need
Yeah.
for community, and not holding it all on our own, that we can maybe transform our practices and the way that we work for the better of everyone by leaning more into group work that makes sense for you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think the time is now. The risk of burnout for therapists is tremendous. It remains a real risk. Not to mention, um, I saw some stats a while back that there's projected to be a shortage of therapists. There's not enough people graduating from graduate school to meet the demand. And so also a lot of the good news is a lot of stigma is going down around people accessing therapy, right? Especially younger generations. They're like totally cool with it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so we're going to have to meet that need in a way that doesn't burn us out. And group is a wonderful, solution to that.
Mhm.
A lot of, what therapists struggle with is feeling like they need to have something to say when their client comes in with their hopelessness or their problem or their dilemma of what should I do? Should I break up with my partner or not? And the temptation for a therapist to go, it sounds like you should break up with them. We spent 3 sessions talking about it and it sounds like you should break up with them or whatever. Right. Just that, that trap that we can fall into of being this wise person for this client, right? Versus helping them tap into their own wisdom, or in the case of a group, a collective wisdom, or just a witnessing of their suffering or their stuckness, and letting the group do that as the healing agent is just, wow, what a relief for the therapist, and way more sustainable, than the alternative.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it also opens up the possibility, which I've been really enjoying, is co-facilitating and doing stuff with other
Yeah.
people. Then I get to learn from them, see their style, and also feel supported.
Yeah.
And I also get to be so much more creative. Like that, just this week alone, I had a circle at my space where
Mm.
um, we did movement and some ritual and some sharing and some writing. It's like it gets me kind of to just be out of that frame that we can get stuck in. And I also have a colleague who I really respect and admire that I'm doing a ketamine group with, and just the magic that can happen and creativity in that
Mm.
environment, and also accessibility for clients. It's like these clients may not be able to afford ketamine treatment, but because we're doing it in a group that's well supported, the report I get over and over again is that they enjoy the group and get more out of the group than they get out of the individual sessions, and it's more accessible to them because we can charge less for it. So it's just really practical.
Mm-hmm.
um, and there's just some energy that really shifts. So I said to Jeremy, who, John, I met John through my husband Jeremy, who's a
Yeah, I should have said that
psychologist.
earlier. I'm
Kind of
like randomly commenting on your husband. He's a really good friend of mine, and he's a psychologist and a business consultant, the testingpsychologist.com. So yeah, I should have said that from the beginning.
but what was I even saying about him? What was
Something
no,
very good. Yeah.
something very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
About
but
facilitating or
yes,
co-facilitating or
I don't know what I was
I
saying,
don't know.
but anyway, I lost it, but that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, it's just been nice to be able to oh, that's what it was. I was telling him that I am more satisfied right now with my practice than I've been since I've been in private practice, and
Wow.
because I am getting to do a lot of different things in just the right amount, which is like my personality. So I do consulting, which I love. Very similar to you,
Yeah.
teaching and training. I did that at the university for all those years. And when I went into private practice, I just wasn't doing enough. So now
Yeah.
that I'm doing more of that, feels really good. But I'm also doing clinical work in person, live, which really fills my cup.
Yeah.
And then working with some group practice owners and helping them to get their group program started. I'm just a person who loves having different outlets, and it keeps me juiced up, and
Mm.
it just has felt great. And it's probably the first time, because I went into private practice in 2017 and I had such diversity in my work at the counseling
Mm-hmm.
center. And then COVID, all that. So it's like the first time that I feel like I have just the right amount,
Yeah.
and group work allows me to
Yeah.
do that. So it's
Mm.
great.
Yeah, it takes a while to calibrate all those areas, but you can do it. Again, you can kind of design this job for yourself.
Yeah, it definitely
And
was,
yeah,
again, like we talk about integrating my work.
yeah,
You know, there were moments of out of balance, right? And it's always like
mm,
it could tip over, right? You just have to, there's no illusion that it's going to stay perfect. It's more
yeah,
like this
for
balancing
sure.
act. But right now it feels great.
Mm, that's great. Okay, we're about out of time, but let me know first of all, like what offerings you have right now. This will be out in the next week or two, but yeah, what offerings do you have right now that you want to talk about? And then of course, how can people find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you. So, one thing I'm really excited about, I'm going to be offering a new online circle, and this is for people who just want to be in circle, and it's once a week, and it's called the Hearth, and it's a place for people to come, and it's only an hour and 15 minutes in the morning once a week, so it's a daily practice, and it's a powerful, powerful format that I've been practicing with. So I'm going to be offering that out, um, for anyone who's interested in just being in circle. It's not a training. And then if you are interested in learning the type of group work that I offer and mentor and teach, in the fall is the retreat, and I require that people come and experience it. So it really is a 100% experiential retreat, so you can really embody the work and feel it. And then if it feels like something you want to offer, there's a mentorship that comes after. So
Mm,
the retreat is this October.
mm-hmm.
I think it's the 5th through the 7th. Don't quote me on that, but it's that first weekend in October, and it's going out probably in a week. I think it'll be open for registration. So it's a
Great.
very small retreat. There's only 15 spots because I keep it
Mm,
really intimate. So if you
yeah,
want to learn this work, that would be the place to come. Mhm.
great. That one is just for women?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Just for women. Yep. But
cool.
see, this needs to be,
Yeah. We'll
because I
we'll
have
we'll
men who are asking about it, and that
totally.
is the next step, is finding ways to, because there is something really sacred and special about having only women. And I think also there's room and a need for having an all gender
Mhm,
group who are
mhm.
interested in that training. So that's on my radar.
Yeah, great.
Mhm.
Well, I look forward to learning more and seeing what you come up with next. So, Carrie, thank you again for doing this, and we'll put links to everything in the description, of course, and encourage folks to check out Carrie's work. And yeah, thanks again, Carrie. Talk to you
Thanks for
soon.
having me. It's
See
great.
you soon. Hey, just jumping in really quick to say this is the last chance to sign up for our upcoming webinar on how to avoid burnout by using the IFS model. Using IFS can help you put your client in the driver's seat, can help deepen their work, help them get better results faster, and most importantly, it can protect you from burnout so that you can have a long, sustainable, and thriving career as a therapist or practitioner. Hope you'll join me. Click on the link in the description, and I'll see you there. Thanks for listening to another episode of Going Inside. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and share your favorite episode with a friend. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at John Clark Therapy, and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarktherapy.com. See you next time.